I guess we've all become sort of inured to assassination. It seems to be. There was a while there where it appeared it was going to be a bi-monthly event. Is it considered bad form for a newsman to appear moved on reporting that sort of thing?
I don't see why it should be. I don't see why it should be at all. In a case where human life is sacrificed for one reason or another. No, I don't think it's bad form to be touched by a story about a mistreated dog. No reason why one's emotions shouldn't be permitted to show. What's the right? Where do we ever get this macho idea that we had to hide behind some kind of a shield all the time?
What about the old saw that television is ruining our youth? It's an evil influence on the country. People are getting 80% more of it than they need.
I don't think you can put a blanket rule on the thing, but I think excess in anything is wrong. Sound awfully moralistic about that, but it's true. Everything ought to be taken in fairly small doses. You're going to enjoy it more if you do. Why does anybody think that television is good for 3 or 4 hours a night? We're filling a huge artistic maw out there, 3 networks and now a lot of others, and cable and all this sort of thing. We're expecting Hollywood, New York, or Chicago, or Atlanta, anywhere else to come up with brilliant programming for all of that time. All the books that are printed are classics. All the magazine articles aren't worth saving. Why do we think, oh, that's so we ought to be selective? If we were more selective, we'd get better television.
More than 60% of us depend on television as our primary source for news. The nightly network and local newscasts, the regularly scheduled current affairs programs, and the occasional public affairs specials. These things make up the majority of the news that people see. But then there are the momentous and often spontaneous events that television, by its very nature, is often witness to. On March 30th, after emerging from a Washington hotel, our newly elected president was felled by an assassin's bullet. And for the rest of the day and on into that night, America watched and waited in hopes that what we had seen from Dallas nearly 20 years ago would not be repeated. And as we watched, those news operations did what only they can do. They kept us all informed in a way that no newspaper could possibly do, minute by minute and from bulletin to bulletin. And with the news that the president would survive, we felt that surely we had had our share of that kind of near tragedy for the year. That is until May 13th, when from Rome we learned of the attempt on the leader of the Catholic Church. And again we sat and waited and learned he would survive. And finally, on October 6th, Americans were to learn that the man who had been so much in our news for his efforts to bring peace to the world had been struck down so violently and bloodily in Cairo. And this time we remembered the 2 recent events in Washington and Rome and hoped for the same outcome. But this time we were wrong. This time television showed us that the good don't always survive. And with all that happened in 1981, that's what we'll remember.
And after a number of years, it's kind of fun to go up in the attic and look through a stack of magazines and be able to reminisce about the good old days by looking at the covers. Tonight, you're not going to have to wait a few years to find out what was inside this issue, because we've brought its cover to life. This has been the year of the primetime soap opera, and 3 better examples of primetime beauty we couldn't find. Here, from Flamingo Road, Morgan Fairchild, from Dynasty, Pamela Sue Martin, and from Knott's Landing, Donna Mills. By the way, TV Guide called them primetime vixens. I think they're all kind of sweet.
If 1981 was the year that saw the beginning of a greater freedom in adult drama on television, it was also the year that people began using their television sets for a lot of things other than watching. People bought video cassette machines in record numbers. Video disc machines went on sale to the public. and it was difficult not to be swept up in what was being called the video revolution. And although it went a bit unheralded, 1981 was the 10th anniversary of the birth of the video game, a little diversion that began in 1971 with two little paddles pushing an electronic ball across a black and white screen, and grew into a multi-million-dollar television-related industry whose profits would begin to outdistance some stations themselves by the decade's end. In honor of this auspicious birth date, and because it allows us to send over the airwaves what many of you haven't yet seen in your own homes, here's the TV Guide 1981 Computer Concerto.